All right, thanks everyone for coming out today. We've got about 8 people online, maybe a few more will join, but I'm good interest in this. I'm going to start off with some comments. I apologize for anyone who was around on Monday when I read basically the same thing, but I think it'll get us rolling. I'll open it up to some other board comments. We're going to walk through some of the slides, so we're not going to read the whole book. Hopefully everyone had a chance to download it and really wait to hear feedback from anyone in the community. But just to start, today we're discussing 2 items, which are the KICA resolution to form a design review board and the proposed agreement with KIWA Partners to transition ARB authority under the general covenants to KICA and obtain RFID access for their guests through our gates. These proposals are the culmination of a 3-year process. The joint task force organized with the town was launched in 2023. The task force spent 2 years analyzing the current developer-controlled ARB and creating a transition recommendation. The KICA board accepted this plan in 2025. Discussions between KICA and KIWA Partners started informally in 2024 and have continued ever since. Following the adoption of the 2025 covenant amendment that authorized KICA to form an ARB, KICA commenced more serious discussions with KIWA Partners. These discussions started, broke down, restarted several times. KIWA Partners introduced the gate access for their guests into the conversation following the passing of KICA's new gate access policy. KICA reached an agreement on a non-binding memorandum of understanding with KIWA Partners in January. KICA is now seeking member input before finalizing any agreement. This proposed agreement is probably not perfect, but we believe it is a good deal for the KICA membership. I'll highlight several misconceptions before opening it up to other directors and members. First, KICA does not believe it can block guests of the Kiawah Island Club, such as those of Orange Hill. The Kiawah Island Club, like the resort, can admit patrons. We can only require that certain access protocols be followed. Second, the club has been admitting guests through their own decal program, and approximately 200 off-island guests were using this as a means to access Kiawah Island freely. The proposed agreement limits this form of entry by 60% and caps it. A draft of a definitive agreement is being prepared by KICA's council and will be subject to a full board vote in the coming meetings. And with that, I'll open it up to any other directors that want to make a comment before we kick off.
Well, I'll make a comment. I think the development of an ARB by the association is long overdue, number one. Number two, I think the consistency and aesthetic that has been created on the island is amazing. And moving the ARB to the association is going to be a big lift. And anybody who isn't a little bit nervous about it isn't paying attention. So this is going to be a big job. We look forward to not only feedback from the community, but participation from the community. I think it's time for us to do this. I'm very supportive of doing it, and it will be complex, and it's critical that we do it right.
I guess what I'd like to say is just really thanking Kevin for shepherding this through for the last 3 years. This has been a huge job to between the committee work and then the negotiations to get the MOU to where it is. I mean, like I said, if you read through the presentation, it's been 50 years and it's taken us 50 years to get to this point. The general covenants all we have in there that eventually the developer would transfer control of the ARB to the community. And here we are 50 years later. So that's a good thing. But also thanks to the community too, we also have the amendment to the KICA covenants, which also gives us the authority to form the KICA ARB. Now, obviously, no one wants 3 ARBs, so that's why we need to communicate together between KICA, the developer, as well as Toki.
Actually, I'll pass on the thanks. David DiStefano, Madeline Kay are here. They worked with us for years on the joint task force as well.
And one clarification, in the general covenants, there is no requirement that the company or the partners transfer. So this has been a big, heavy lift, and it's required a lot of give and take. And we're now to the point where we believe that what you're seeing is, I call it an omnibus agreement, where there were a lot of issues that were on the table and we're trying to resolve them as part of getting to the point where we can get a transition of the ARB, where we can deal with off-site access to the island through our gate policy, looking at the potential of reconfiguring our gate, because at the end of the day, regardless of what the MOU says, we're going to have increased traffic. So.
Yeah, I'll tack onto that. We are trying to operate in two ways. KICA is forming its own ARB immediately, hopefully, if we pass this resolution. But also, if Kiwa Partners hands off the ARB to KICA, which they can do at any time, they have a put option. So at any moment in time, they could drop this on us. Probably unlikely, but it's something we always have in the back of our minds. It's not a question of whether we can take it or not. KICA ends up with the ARB, multifamily, commercial, common properties, et cetera. So I know people talk about parsing it out, but I think that would require a general covenants change, which we all know is difficult. But could you pull up slide 2, and I'll run through a few slides that we talked about might help a lot of the questions we got. We got about 45 comments, I think, when we put out the original resolution. I would say about little over 70% of them, there were, I forget the numbers, but about high 60s were positive. Yes, you should move it. There were 3 no's, but they were more in the category of no, you should move it immediately, or no, you should move it away. The town shouldn't be doing this. They weren't really a no to KICA's ARB, but it worked out, if you read those, as positive, to be in the low 70s, positive to launching the ARB, which is about in line with the votes we got for the covenant amendment. But 3 points on page 2. Under the general covenants, the ARB and all architectural review is currently controlled by Kiwa Partners, and it's been that way for 50 years. Kiwa Partners is the developer of the island, a private entity. In 2025, we put a review or an amendment through for passage by the members that passed over 75%, that empowers KICA to form its own ARB. Some of those powers were baked into our KICA covenants, but that amendment really clarified that KICA can form this ARB. The proposed MOU that we signed that would lead to a definitive agreement, it basically goes one step further, which says KICA now can form an ARB. It clearly has its own ARB, but now Kiwa Partners would agree to transfer all the powers it has in the general covenants to KICA. So it's kind of a multi-step process. Can you flip forward to page 8? And please feel free, after I run through a few of these, to stop. We can go back to the presentation if anyone hasn't had a chance to look at it. But I thought this is a critical page. There's a lot of talk in the comments about it should be professionally run. And that is what the task force structure and proposal came up with. If you look at what we've got up on the board, it assumes that the Kiwa Island Community Association will have a new department called the Design Review Group. A lot of what we put together mirrors the finance group. The Design Review Group would have a director, which would be a full-time salaried position at KICA that is, professionally accredited, has the responsibility to run this group. Ideally, someone who has architecture experience and a lot of good organizational experience. That is akin to our KICA Director of Finance. Alongside that, we have the Design Advisory Committee. I would call that akin to the Finance Committee. It's a group of KICA members, property owners, that have been appointed by the board that are there to advise on governance matters, oversee the hiring, firing, in the same way that the Finance Committee provides a lot of input to our permanent finance group. The Design Advisory Committee, maybe they meet once a month, maybe it's once a quarter, maybe it's twice a year, but they're really providing oversight for the board. So the board doesn't have to have its hands all the way into the ARB all the time. We've got extra hands helping out through this committee. And then under the director, there'd be a full-time staff. We budget it right now at 2 to 3 people. It'll depend on, frankly, how busy we are, how many new homes there are, how many people are painting their homes, changing paint colors, but that will run as a function of KICA. A lot of people ask about how that'll be paid for. There'll be a lot of user fees, just as there are now with the ARB. The committee went back and forth. Should it be paid for 100% by user fees? Or does this new department really benefit all of the members of KICA and the property owners on Kiawah Island, we propose 50-50 split. But I think that's up to a new board to decide whether they want to fund this new group all through user fees, halfway through user fees, or not at all. But that's really a board decision in the future.
And Kevin, I would just observe that in terms of the role of the Design Advisory Committee, the DAC, I mean, it's always going to be important, but its importance at the front end of this process cannot be overstated.
If you look at our resolution, we did two things. The proposed resolution that the board will be voting on, it does two things primarily. One is it says immediately, because we know we have this gap in the community around commercial multifamily, immediately going forward, KICA will exercise its authority to review architectural projects for multifamily and commercial. We don't have everything set up. Frankly, they come in maybe once or twice, once every 1 or 2 years. That'll be handled by the board until the entire design review board is set up. We don't know of any that are coming down the pike right now, so we think it's not a big risk. The second is that we would charter a temporary task force. Lisa's looking at me funny. That'll only be until we have the full DRB set up. But there's concern that we don't have anything in place immediately. A lot of people have that concern. There's then a task force that'll be set up to write the full permanent charter for the design review group. The KICA board would pass that, and then it would start to move into work.
And it's actually a standing committee, isn't it, rather than a task force?
Well, the first one's a task force to write the charter for a full committee.
Gotcha.
Just because we can get it going faster that way. The other point that I wanted to make, because some people did bring this up, is the task force did look at trying to make the design review group totally separate from KICA. And it was just problematic from a legal and a financial perspective. And the cleanest way to do it was to put it under KICA. But we did look at it long and hard, and there were people who really wanted it as a separate group. But if you look at the HOA Act and then you figure out how to finance it, the authority and then the covenant authority and it goes to the board and then dispersed from there. So that's why we thought the way we have it set up with the advisory committee, they can be sort of that ad hoc second set of eyes that I believe we thought that they would have like a 3-year term. So it's a little bit more long-term of a group. So hopefully that will work out.
And rotating.
Mm-hmm.
You want to bump forward one? I'll just cover 1 or 2 more slides, and then we'll really just one, and then we'll open it up for comments and questions. To page 9. This is the timeline. I'm not going to go through it page by page. It probably needs to be double checked against the MOU and where the final document that we signed comes out. But we're looking at a 2-year implementation. It took us 3 years from when we launched the joint task force to get through the ARB amendment to the covenants and to come up with this proposal and negotiate with Kiawah partners. I've seen this problem being raised for 3 years. We're looking at least 2 more years. The way we've negotiated the deal is that it would move in stages with commercial multifamily first, and then it moves down through, the more simpler things like changing paint colors and finishes with new construction. We think that'll take 2 years, but each phase launches 3 months after KICA's request. So if KICA feels like it's going too fast, they can wait to ask for the next phase. If we think it's going really well, we can ask for the next phase, but not sooner than like 3 to 6 months before the previous phase. It's all in that agreement. We think that felt right to us. It may take 2 years, but as Paul said, we want to get it right. If it goes well, maybe we'll move quicker. We do find ourselves in the position that at any point in time, Kiawah partners could put the whole thing in our lap. We don't hope they don't, but that's something we have to always manage that risk as well. But with that, I think we'll open it up for the board comments or anyone in the room or online. Questions or general comments, please. He beat you by about that much.
He's probably say the same thing.
Half a second.
I know what he's going to say. I know what, maybe not, we'll see. But thank you, Jim Jurasik, 425 C11 report. It's nice to see almost everybody from the task force is here from the phase 3.
I apologize. I forgot that you served on the task
That's
force as
okay,
well,
that's okay.
and thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay. There was no, you know, that's fine.
And Sandy,
Enjoyable, and Sandy
actually,
as
and
well.
Sandy Devine did
Sandy
as well.
Devine
I
as well.
apologize twice.
I'm trying to see if anybody else, a few board members, obviously. Yes, and it was, I think we made a great experience. Great to see it come to fruition. And, you know, I thank the board for making such progress. There are 10 gajillion things that need to be done before this is actually created and implemented. But I just wanted to remind everybody about one aspect of it that we talked a lot about during the committee process. And that was how far will the authority extend, especially when it comes to applications for maintenance and what else that can lead to. And I think there were a few major concerns that the community generally has about the way the ARB operates. I agree with you, Kevin. I think you cannot dispute the great things they've done with respect to keeping the island beautiful. But I think, you know, there have been some controversies about the way that they have operated. One of them is what I will call the perception or reality. I won't claim it to be either one, about how applications can be parlayed into more than just the subject matter of the application itself. And for instance, you know, if you apply to do some maintenance work on your house, let's say you do have other ARB violations or design violations, or for that matter, rules and regulations that are violations. I think the committee felt very strongly, and anybody can correct me if I was wrong, that there needs to be a separation of those things, that applications need to stand on their own, or else you're just discouraging people from applying and you want people to apply. You want people to be engaged in the process and not doing things on their own. I mean, that's certainly the way to create the best continuity across the community for the application of the standards and for compliance. So I think we talked a lot about making sure that we don't use applications to the ARB for maintenance or improvements as leverage to correct other problems, that those need to be solved through their own independent path. The second, taking that further.
Jim, sorry, could I ask
yeah.
a question?
Yeah.
Do you think that's happening?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We heard a lot of those stories.
I will, you know, we spent a lot of time with Amanda during this process, and there's been a lot of discussion about whether it's perception or reality. And I'm not going to opine one way or the other other than it certainly is the perception. I think the perception needs to be dealt with regardless.
Okay.
So the second thing, sort of taking that to the next step, is that it sort of seemed, and again, I won't opine whether it's reality or perception, seemed to extend even beyond that, where let's say there was the dead tree episode that everybody here knows so well. And the question was, there was mitigation that was required for that. And the question is whether, if somebody is obligated to do something, whether the current ARB, and I won't dispute the legalities of it, had the right to then parlay that into making an applicant do even more on their property. That's something they didn't apply for. And I just think the board needs to seriously consider, in the Design Advisory Committee when it's formed, you know, how exactly, because if you look at the applications, and Amanda can testify to this, that roughly 80% of the applications are for maintenance and minor reviews. Yeah. So, I mean, that it really is tied to that. And that's what the membership experiences the most. So there really needs to be thought about that. And Kevin, I mean, everybody on the committee remembers this discussion, and it happened more than once. And, you know, and there was the talk about people intentionally leaving their deposits because the ARB would come and require things that exceeded the amount of the deposit. Again, I won't opine whether that's just, whether that's actually happened or not. But anyway, long-winded enough. I think everybody understands what I'm putting forth. I know there are many details. So,
and you know what you highlight is that we need good rules and regulations and a way to enforce rules and regulations if the community wants minimum standards, for example, even landscaping.
yes.
So instead of using the ARB new application to keep homes up to snuff,
Right.
maybe we need to have the right rules so that we can make sure homes are properly maintained. And we've seen some of those this year, whether they put in a new application or not.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And it's a bifurcated issue. Rules enforcement, rules regulation, and authority. You know, we had a 2025 amendment that didn't pass. So within the board and the governance task force, revisiting the issue of, how do we get that authority so that we can go down the path of enforcement separate from review approval through the ARB.
Right. I think that's part of the controversy is at least raised by some people was, did the current ARB, do they have that current authority? And, obviously there are serious questions about that. But I don't think I think you're right. I'm certainly not proposing that we relax standards. I think the ARB's done a great job keeping the community beautiful. And I just think it needs to be done the right way. And I think you all agree with that. And that's one of the monumental tasks that you'll need to sort of take a look at the way they're doing it, the way you want to do it, and then, come up with a system and then support it legally and properly underneath so that you can execute it properly.
Yeah, that's a hidden benefit to this is if we can get it all under KICA and have standards that everyone agrees on and a way to enforce them and, like a modern HOA.
And transparency will help a lot too. Obviously the current ARB, their proceedings are not to any level public, decisions are not public. And I think obviously you're going to have to operate under a level of transparency by statute. And, I think that'll help to the extent that there is some level of fiction to this, that it'll help dispel those in addition to, just providing better information to the community about how things are being applied.
And a robust due process.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
that if you feel aggrieved that there's a way to address that.
Absolutely. And that's discussed in the slides. You didn't quite get to that slide, but there is an appeal process that was part of that. So I won't re-legislate the whole thing. It's all there. But
If you
again, I
haven't
thank you.
downloaded it, please do.
So I thank you for getting it to this point. It was great to see so much of the phase 3 report sort of pull up forward to this point. And
Thank you again for your help.
yeah,
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
And Sandy.
Really
Thanks.
benefited.
Thanks.
David?
I would have, David Stefano, 31 Burroughs Hall, I would have addressed some of the issues that Jim did, but I'm not. My biggest concern is in the MOU, we have gate access and ARB. I know it's a negotiation. They should be separate. And for a number of reasons. It's really about RFIDs, bottom line, because every entity on the island has the right to invite guests to the island, day pass or whatever it is. So what we have right now, we have one entity, KICA, that pays 50% of the basic KICA fee. It's $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 a year, whatever that number is. And we're looking at granting that to Orange Hill. There's an opt-out in there, I think, that should go away, but that's not one of my issues right now. There are many other entities out there that are not addressed. In other words, if you do this with the partners, there are other entities out there that are not going to be affected by that are going to be either getting away with something or having to pay something they shouldn't pay. For instance, the 100 RFIDs that's in there that the partners get, who are those people? They're obviously not club members because they would be getting it as a club member. They're obviously not our.
No, I think they are club members.
Club members.
The whole point is they are club members.
So
They're
those,
non-resident club members.
okay. Are they going to pay for those?
They're non-KICA members.
Right.
They're club members.
But are they going to pay for those? In other words, you're at KICA, you have to pay. You're at Orange Hill, you have to pay.
They're part of we gave those to the club and the club will use them as they see fit.
But for free.
Well, I don't think it's for free. I don't know if you saw the land that's involved in that. There's money involved.
Well, yeah,
So
but
I don't call it free.
No, that's
There's
what
not
I
an
mean. In other
ongoing
words,
payment.
the negotiations of land, access, et cetera, has got nothing to do with the ARB. So you take people at Keel River Estates, what's their status?
So anyone at Kiowa River Estates needs to have someone on the island sponsor them as a guest and come in the left lane.
Okay, so nobody at Keel River Estates, Governors Club members are not going to be eligible for an RFID.
No one has asked us for that yet.
Okay. The problem I see with that is the people from Keel River Estates are Governors Club members. So the resort has to give them a pass.
No. We have to give them a pass.
Well, okay, you have to give them the
The
pass.
resort requests.
The request a pass,
We issue.
okay? That's going to become, as a practical matter, could become a burden for us and a burden for them.
Except we've been talking about this for a year. And they have technology people, we have technology people. Now we have $1 million to spend on consultants. And we think we can greatly improve that problem with software.
And I think the resort is committed to working with us so that they accomplish their objectives of having real guests come onto the island. We have our objective met, which is controlling all passes issued through the front gate.
And even non-Governors Club members, just hotel guests, day golfers, we want all of that to go smoother and more electronic.
So there's another problem with the resort, and that is Roger is the beneficiary of some god-awful agreement that was given to him by the board in 1988 or thereabouts that constitutes, in his mind, a special easement right that nobody else has. So we're dealing with historical legacies. We're also dealing with rights under the covenants, the general covenants and the KICA covenants. So we're trying to mesh all of this together so that at the end of the day, you don't sit in a queue because we're forcing everybody to pull a day pass who doesn't live on the island.
Right.
So-
And I get that, but what I see is there's two entities that are paying and everybody else is not paying.
They haven't asked.
What do you mean?
I mean, the KICA partners came to us and said, we would like to find an arrangement where we can get extra RFIDs.
Okay,
And we spent months on
all right.
it, more than months.
I think,
And David, one other thing that we haven't done historically, but I think we have the ability to do in our governance documents is to charge reasonable fees for access. Haven't done that. We do it for commercial contractors, of course, but I think our ability to charge for access is much broader than that. Now, we haven't exercised that, but it exists. And that's important. That's an important fact.
I just, from 30,000 feet, are there people going to be getting RFIDs that don't pay for them as opposed to people that are getting RFIDs that are paying for them? Right now, we're going to have two entities that are going to be paying for their RFIDs, basically. Okay.
Who are those entities?
It's going to be Orange Hill and Cacique.
Okay.
Okay, we know what
Really,
that,
it's really the Key Island Club and Cacique.
I know the
But yeah.
entity that you're
Yeah.
paying.
Yeah.
And speaking to that you bring that up, one of the things that's kind of unfair. So the Cacique HOA pays the fee. There are people out there that are paying that fee and also own property on Kiowa. I know there's a few because there was a lawsuit over that. So they're paying double. I think from fairness, it should be that when Cacique gives you the list of everybody that's there to determine how much they have to pay, if there's 2 or 3 on there that own property here and already have an RFID, should they have to pay twice? That's a fairness issue.
I
not a
think,
legal
I think a
David,
board
can
can
I
look at
ask
that.
Yeah.
I think a board can look at that. I
It's
mean,
problem.
But we
that's
have
a hard
problem.
thing
We
to
have
do.
a 4 corners document too that.
Right.
you know,
No, I
we start screwing with
I know,
Right.
but my point is conflating the gate access issue with the ARB issue. I think it's going to complicate it. They're apples and oranges. This was brought up at the town council meeting the other day, the same thing. How can we do both at the same time? Because there are other people, Governors Club members, that don't live at Keel River Estates. They live in all over the place. There's not that many of them, but there are some. Where do they fit into this? So
through our gate policy. And we're talking with Roger, and he believes that because of his 1988 easement agreement, he's got certain rights that we not totally aligned with. So, you know, this is like pulling a thread on a sweater. We're trying to resolve with each of the different groups. We have a lot of issues that we're working with the partners, and it makes sense from a strategic, getting everything on the table at once, rather than leaving things. We have leverage, they have leverage, we can account for, this is the way we do things in the real estate development world. You know, so.
And the gate access is already passed.
No,
Really,
the-
the only part
no.
about the gate access is
yeah, but the gate access
extra
passed, but
RFIDs.
the gate access didn't actually include Orange Hill per se.
No,
literally.
yeah, you're right. So this doesn't address all gate access. This agreement really just addressed Orange Hill and the extra under.
Right.
Well, it does. The gate access does, because Orange Hill would be a guest, capital G.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
so,
well, no, but that was already written.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, being a guest, I mean, a guest is a guest is a guest. They're allowed to get on the island. They can either go by RFD or day passes, one or the other. I would encourage the board to work on the other entities that are going to be affected by this RFID issue
We've
in
spoken-
parallel with working with the ARB issue.
We've spoken to all of them.
Okay.
Actually, the only one we probably haven't spoken to is Seafields.
Yeah.
Or Seabrook or Mount Pleasant or any place like that.
and those are derivative
But, yeah.
with the Governor's Club and,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we've heard things about Seafields that we haven't established are true. We've heard that they were marketing those units by saying that you get access to the island. I'm not sure that that's the case,
Well, they
unless.
could if somebody writes up a pass, but see, Seafields is another unique situation because there's some club members out there, some Governor's Club members, some people that have nothing.
Right.
And I agree, but,
Yeah, we're trying to knock them off one at a time, though. You're right about that.
yeah, because I don't want to see a situation where there's an entity out there that feels that they haven't been considered.
That what,
And-
sorry?
Hasn't been considered.
If there's any entities out there that have been considered. The other thing that I think is important, and we addressed this at one point in time, it wasn't when Amanda was on the board, but how far down the road are the partners going to be able to go to keep adding people? Is it going to be included in this agreement? This is the
It is
last one?
not. It is not. And realistically, you can't stop a future board from doing it, and we're not allowing it right now.
Well-
And if those future additional members are members of the Hugh Island Club, they're guests. So
So it's just about RFIDs.
Yeah.
Future boards will control RFIDs other than KICA and what we agreed to now.
I mean, I know you can't stop the access, but you can control the RFIDs. There are other properties they own that they may develop, and it's
They would
Yeah.
not get RFIDs under this agreement.
okay. Thank you.
thank you, sir.
Anyone
Do
else?
we have someone online?
Yeah, sure. Go to someone online.
Todd Bonet. Todd, you're unmuted on our end.
Okay, great. Todd Bonet, 3532 Shipwatch. Kevin and the board in general, I appreciate everything you've done here. This is a great outcome for the community. I've got two questions. One is when we think about the team and the leadership we'll put together on this, I guess I'd look at it and see that there's a different task in standing up the ARB than there is in administering it. Have you thought about how you would structure the setup committee or organization so that we're not, excuse me, constrained by trying to find someone who can do both?
Well, yeah. So the first step is to set up the design advisory task force, which is in the resolution, which will
Right.
really come in and they'll look at the transition. They'll write the charter for a permanent group. That's what I would call the setup committee. And then they will hand it off to, and it may be some of the same people, the permanent, as Tim said, permanently chartered design advisory committee that'll then oversee governance and, helping the board keep an eye on ARB, like the finance committee helps the board keep an eye on finances. And then we will
Right.
have staff that do most of the administrative work going forward.
So, for example, I'm assuming that there will be some type of system put in place so that the ARB staff has a way to manage all of the projects and that there's a more effective, more efficient way for members to interact with the ARB. So will that be something, the evaluation of that system, will that be something that the task force will undertake? Or is that something that you would envision the ARB team that's put in place would undertake?
I would hope we'd hire a director and the director working with Shannon and her team, our internal IT team, and people who may volunteer from the community or from the DAC will see that. But I would think once we hire a director, they're going to have 2 years before they have theoretically under all the control of the ARB as the plan set forth. They should have plenty of time to work on a software solution. I would
Yes.
think that's
Yeah, and Kevin, I was just using that example, but I guess I just look at it and see that the setup requires probably a different skill set and background than the administration. And I guess I'm just asking, let's not expect to find someone who's capable of doing both, because that may narrow the universe of people. And I think we could complement somebody who is an effective administrator, complement somebody who's effective at that in the setup process by, putting people or teams around that organization so that we've got the best of both worlds. Hey, the second question I've got is, for those that have done a deep dive on the general covenants, there's an interpretation that the ARB, the partners ARB, has exceeded its authority under the general covenants. Have you taken a position on that? And if you haven't, when do you see that occurring in this process?
So to your point, we're not sure that that's productive at this juncture, because I think that what we've done is we have implemented what we think was missing in the general covenants in our 2025 resolution. So moving forward, and again, not to besmirch, what the partners have done or the ARB has done, we believe it's best just to move forward, implement what we think is going to be supported by the KICA covenants and the general covenants, and we think that we've done that. We also, as part of this transition, and the partners have acknowledged that they're going to continue to work on their projects to completion, notwithstanding the transition, so that we don't get bogged down in what might or might not be, an inefficient or improper process. We will start our own process. We'll handle our own policies and procedures and rules, and our authorizing resolution through the covenant change allows us to charge fees, allows us to do some of the things that we have heard aren't embedded in the general covenants, but we're dealing with that. And also not to appreciate what is going to happen. We're going to have to work with the ARB, and there's going to have to be a productive give and take. There's a lot that we'll need to learn from them. I'm sure they'll be able to give us input. And to your point, as to an administrator versus an implementer, I think the problem in many cases is you hire somebody who wasn't part of the planning, who could have brought something to the table operationally. So I think that you can't have, one person doing the design and then have an administrator step in and run with it. So I think that we're going to have to work on both sides of that bifurcated, process.
Yeah, and Tim, I agree. I wasn't suggesting that it'd be one and then another, that we would simply complement it. For those of you who have been involved in M&A, this kind of reminds me of what's called a carve out. And all I'm suggesting is that if we find the perfect person who's strong on the administration side, is a good face for the community, but doesn't have the deep experience in establishing one, that it's easier to, deal with the organizational startup side by complementing that great resource with other resources. And Tim, one last question: when you're talking about that transition, how it's going to work, have you discussed with the partners how the historical information is going to be handed over or accessible to the new ARB going forward?
I'll let Kevin jump into that. It's addressed in the MOU.
I'm trying to remember where we have that. Yes. All property file records associated with ARB application submissions shall be deposited into electronic shared portal during each transition phase and made available for use by both KICA and Kiwa partners. At the conclusion of phase 4, KICA will be granted permanent access to all architectural review files, which is very important, because you may have a property that did something 10 years ago and they come in
Right.
2 months now. And we wanted to make that historical knowledge part of the transfer.
Okay, good. Again, guys, I really appreciate everything you've done here. This is a great outcome for the community. Thank you.
So
Todd.
Todd, let me just make a couple of quick comments on your first point. It's entirely possible that in the setup process that you refer to, that we'll avail ourselves of outside expertise that isn't incorporated into the final structure. So if we need to have professional consultancy to guide us in the establishment process, you know, we have the ability and the resources to do that. And secondly, in terms of the operational side, to me, this is like a new line of business for a KICA. And all the dimensions that go with that, technology, people, budget, operations. So I don't think anyone here is underestimating the task. And I accept your thoughts relative to the right people for part one and the right people for part two. And I think we're sensitive to that.
Yeah, and Paul, I agree with you. This is a heavy lift, but it's one well worth the effort.
And we're talking about the same strategy for the gate, bringing in a consultant that can help us look at the software we use, the way the lanes are designed, the whole process is where a pass office could go. I mean, we have a certain amount of knowledge in the community, but getting a recognized consultant to help for a while to kick this off the right way, I think is part of the plan as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else online?
No.
Anyone else in the room?
I have two questions. One being on the topic of data, it's not totally clear whether the partners continues to have rights to the data once things are totally transitioned. This may be a summary, but that was not totally clear.
Okay, it's a good question.
And then the second is on timing. Who decides when each phase is, kind of hits the objectives and it's time to move on to the next phase? When you get into phase 3 and 4, there's some timing triggers, but it doesn't look like that's the case in the earlier phases, at least in this reading.
At the request of KICA, like phase 2, it says shall transition at the request of KICA. Phase 3 at the request of KICA.
Are there rights to decline the transfer at that point, or is it when people wants to?
I think subject to these minimum times, like 3 months, 6 months. I think the final document has to make it clear. If it's been 3 months and we call and say we're requesting that we want to move into the next phase, that should be further documented.
And the point there was, a lot of times hard dates are great, but it's also be careful what you wish for, because if we're not ready for that next phase transition, then it's
no. 100%. I think the question is, can anything be unreasonably withheld in terms of the ability to?
So this is an MOU, digging into, most commercial contracts are governed by good faith and fair dealing. So, I would expect that would be part of the definitive agreement or agreements that we enter into. But I don't see that that's going to be an issue. But to your point, what is your concern if Amanda and her team walks away with banker boxes full of documents?
Nothing offhand, but it's a question. Do you understand what the answer is?
Oh, okay.
Sandy, you touched on something else that is important that I'd like to just talk about for a second, and that is subsequent approvals. So we don't yet have the sort of the process architecture laid out in terms of going from where we are now to a fully functioning ARB. But it seems to me appropriate that there would be certain points in the evolution of this new business. For example, approval of the budget, right? So this new business is going to need a budget. Well, that seems to me to be a logical place for the board to actually approve that particular element of the business transition. Now, there may be, I'm just making that up for example, but I think it is a good example. There may be particular phases of the development of this activity where the board's approval will be required, get input from the community, keep the community involved. So I think it would be healthy and appropriate for the board to engage at certain stages of the evolution.
And I'll point out again, our resolution doesn't say we're starting the ARB tomorrow. It says we are forming the task force to start the ARB. We have a transition recommendation, but now we need someone to sit down and write these charters and documents. And so.
Yeah, my main question really is, sort of where the balance lies to be able to, kind of say the phase is materially complete, we're ready to move on. Both parties have to agree. Again, can one agree and one disagree?
It's at KICA's request.
Yeah, and it says at KICA's request shall transition. The language is they shall, unless another date is mutually agreed to.
And if you've ever seen the process of an LOI or an MOU, morphing into a definitive agreement. There's going to be a ton of drafting that will go into this, that the concept is that, but at the end of the day, there may be variations that, the partners decide, well, wait a second, what if? And it's not going to presumptively materially change the concepts, but it's going to backfill, the specificity that's required.
I think we'd go from 6 to 60 pages for this is done. So, sorry, I thought you were waving here. So next, does anyone else have a comment? Lisa, please.
Lisa Mascola, 134 Blue Heron Pond. A couple of easy things. I get that you're all going to vote to say yes. So I think David's point I agreed with for different reasons, but you're not going to separate it. I'm supportive as a community member of the RFID for the partners. I sort of thought the vote should be separated because that's a really easy thing. I think the rest of it is very complicated, but you're going to vote, so that's fine. Given that the amendment last year for enforcement authority didn't pass, when you get there doing this ARB stuff, where do you think the authority to enforce stuff?
Two enforcement issues. One, there's the issue of KICA having authority to assess fines, charge people for violations,
right,
and even engage in private property.
Right.
That's completely separate. Under the robust 2025 ARB resolution,
right,
embedded in that is the authority to charge, and so it's separate
and enforce.
and enforce.
Yeah, and they were separate documents. And the enforcement one still got over 70%, right? It
It
just
was like
didn't pass.
just under.
It was like
I
70.
still
Just
think-
over 70%.
I still think there's a potential challenge there. I just put that out there
Well,
for you
and
smart
I'll
people
say
to think
that
about.
challenge is mitigated by if Kiwa Partners passes their powers through the general covenants, because now we have KICA authority under the KICA covenants, and then we'll pick up the general powers in the general.
Somebody's not going to like it. I think it's worth thinking about. Somebody's going to complain because somebody always complains. You said before, I think, Kevin, that, well, the partners could just dump it on you. Part of the MOU would be to say, geez, could we get an agreement not to dump? That seems to me a relatively straightforward thing to do.
Lisa, I would also say that, just sort of stepping back for a minute, I think it's in the partner's interest for this transition to go well.
I completely agree. And again, to Sandy's point about asking questions,
Yeah.
today we don't see a reason. Today we don't.
Okay.
It's a pretty easy thing to do. I think we have massively underestimated how much this is going to cost. I think you've massively underestimated. There's a line item in there that says $25,000 for systems.
In what?
I don't know, somewhere.
I think that was just like,
Okay, I thought I saw a budget line item.
I don't
that
think
said-
that's our permanent systems. I
No.
think that was like,
Very narrow.
that was additional, that was like, this is the 110 we said just to get the thing kicked off.
Okay.
Before
That
we
was a
started
one-time
collecting any
cost.
fees to offset
Great.
bigger costs.
Okay, great. My broader concern has always been that this whole thing started because we had people who were complaining about administrative process. And it really did start with the tree, the famous tree. And it sort of escalated from there. People complaining they didn't get their deposit back, or people complaining that they didn't like the process, or people got shorted in the process. And it was all about the process, and it was about control and about the community having control. And frankly, I think the last thing that we want is the community to have control of the architectural standards and the application of the architectural standards. And the board being involved in the architectural process, to me, is just a recipe for disaster. The thing I care about is property value. And the thing that everybody in this community should care about is property value and the preservation of the property value. And we do get to that, I admit, in phase 3, right? You get to page 4, whatever it is, and there's the mission of the design review group, and it's got the glorious preservation. And then right below it are the 10 principles. Every single one of those principles starts with something that has to do with control. And that's just not useful to my way of thinking. So when you get this design advisory committee, it's a DAC. When you get this design advisory committee, I think you need to look really long and hard, who's ever on that design advisory committee. And how is that getting formed? You're going to solicit
By
from the
board, yeah,
community?
like the finance committee, we'll solicit and appoint.
And we need to talk about that too. Those 10 things that start out with transparency to the community and all those things, that needs to be completely rethought, in my opinion. You get the mission, which is the right mission. You got to figure out how you're going to achieve the mission, not transparency and control. I don't really care about community control, and I'm a community member. I want this thing to be focused on property value and the preservation of property value, not community transparency. This whole thing started because a bunch of people were grumpy. I get it. I get sometimes the process wasn't perfect. This can't be about the perfect process. This has to be about the preservation of property value. And if you think about the finance committee, I was the chair of the finance committee. Paul's the chair of the finance committee. The finance committee meets once a month and it does really great work. We've done some brilliant things on the finance committee when I was chair and when Paul is chair. That can't be what this is about. And if you think about writing the charter and this design, that's a full-time job.
Wait, why not? Why can't, if the finance committee works so well, why can't it advise the board on ARB?
Because this is a lot more detailed work to get started.
But to get started. Okay.
So who's going to do that? This is the design advisory committee?
So what we talked about was a task force to help set everything up and a permanent committee to advise the board forever.
Task force is a full-time job for 3 people?
I'm hoping we had, on the joint task force, we had 10.
Full-time. Who's going to do
No,
this?
I don't personally don't.
It's going to take 2 years. If you don't do it, if it's not a full-time job for somebody who
No, we're
cares.
hiring staff. as
Are you
well.
volunteering?
Yeah.
Just because I retired.
Yeah, we'll
No.
have a staff of anywhere from 1 to 4 people.
For the design advisory committee,
No, for the design.
no,
No, for the
review board.
operations.
For the operations,
which comes after the design advisory committee.
yeah, the task force.
There's a
yeah.
lot of work the task force has to do. And
Yes,
unless
we
somebody's,
agree.
But we also talked about getting the design review director on board as quickly as possible.
I
And they're
agree.
going to be doing a
I
lot.
Do
agree.
you have a better idea? I mean, I don't mean that sarcastic, but like how else could we go?
I think it's a full-time job for some bodies to do this. I don't know if you're going to get 2 or 3 community members to, or even half-time to be doing this.
So
Otherwise,
consultants effectively.
otherwise,
I don't
you're going to
disagree.
be looking at another 2 or 3 years. Look at how long this took. I mean, it was great work. All you people who were on it did great work. It was blood, sweat, and tears.
So
I
what you
get
would
it.
say is hire the director, get 2 other consultants to work half-time and have them then work with the with the task force, and put an army together to get it done.
It's a hugely important thing. It can't be somebody's also job. It can't be somebody's part-time job.
Mm.
I just don't see
Yeah,
that.
point taken. I mean, I think that's the sort of thing that, again, once you have a task force, they can talk about it for 12 hours, come to the board and say, hey, we need a budget.
It's got to be something like
Yeah.
that. Because to me,
Lisa, I take your point that there is going to be an inherent risk that one of the board members' next door neighbor wants to do X, Y, or Z and
Yep.
influence the decision. And that's the beginning of a downward spiral.
call it the pink flamingo problem.
I get it. I get it. And I don't think we can make that risk disappear.
We have that risk now. We have the partners
Well, it's a
adjudicating their
different,
own,
it's,
so
it's
it's
a different.
currently in place.
Okay.
and
But we don't
but
have
you-
pink flamingos.
But you have projects that people are not happy with because they don't think they followed their own standards. So I think that you're
And none of those
oversimplifying it. This
things-
is not a
Yeah.
tree issue. This
Yeah.
is not a complainer issue.
It is.
No, it is not.
In my
This
opinion,
is-
I'm entitled to my
this
opinion.
is- well,
I'm
that's
entitled to my
fine.
opinion.
But this is
I'm
a
entitled to my opinion.
situation where for 50 years, one group has maintained control and nowhere
multiple
in the
groups.
United
Thank God.
States.
Thank God.
Well,
nowhere-
that's fine,
let me
but
just
we're
say-
saying your view is different than our view, so don't oversimplify this.
I'm not oversimplifying.
And this is the reason the town got involved, because they said enough. We don't
Great.
like the way
I-
that the
I-
ARB
I
is
understand
sitting
it.
in judgment of the ARB.
Great. I understand it. I understand it. It's, and I will give you a fact. It's the only island on the east coast of the United States of America where the tree canopy has increased for the last 2 decades.
What I know is
With
that.
all of the building, with all of the building and all of the construction,
Even the cake?
with all of the building and all of the construction, with all of the building and all of the construction, It's the only island where the tree canopy is actually increased. It's the only, now, I don't know, maybe you don't care about your property value. I care about my property value. And I actually think.
To put that on me that I don't care about my property value.
I didn't
Now
say-
you're
I didn't
creating
say
a
you
straw
didn't.
man argument.
I didn't say
Look,
you
we
didn't.
understand what your concerns are. We truly believe that where we have come from in those 50 years has been a good thing. Absolutely.
It's been a great thing. That's why you bought, everybody bought
Absolutely.
here.
But at the end of the day, enough is enough. It's time to turn it over.
Great.
And
Enough.
for a developer to sit in judgment of their own plans,
Oh.
just, so.
Lisa,
You know-
both things can be true.
I don't disagree. The only thing I'm saying is that I think you are currently oversimplifying the amount of work it's gonna take.
Not me.
To get, I know you, yes, I know. I think in general.
I think it's going to be a beast.
But it doesn't mean we don't start.
Because our community has charged us to do that. Every one of us ran on a platform that included
I understand.
taking over the ARB
I
from the
said
partners.
yes. I understand that I'm a minority voice.
I am hopeful that the
Don't
partners,
use my word, Paul.
I am hopeful that the partners will be cooperative and will be helpful.
I have no doubt.
And we will welcome that help.
Just because something's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't try. I mean, I've never been scared of trying something. I mean,
Name and
that's in my
address.
nature.
Buddy Patch, 22 Arrowhead Hall. Thanks for everything you do, and ARB, thanks for everything you do. I just have one suggestion. Can you please, in these new documents, insist that the ARB, whoever that may be, do a survey at the end of every build and ask the homeowner how their process went. It's a simple thing. Most homes out here are being built for, $3 to 5, 10, 15, $20 million. Why not just ask them how it went and see how they feel? Because I know that it's been done independently and the results were not very good. Okay? And that might help everyone's process in trying to accomplish the goal that we're trying to get to here, right?
Keep improving.
Right?
Yep,
And that's
good
just
idea.
a simple thing.
Good idea.
Really,
That's a good idea.
That's
And-
really all I have to say. I'm not going to go into anything negative, but it's not going to accomplish anything, but a survey would.
So I would even take that a step further and talk to contractors too about how the process went, because I know the contractors have opinions.
Hi, Lance Spencer, 40 Sunlight Bend. I'm speaking purely as a KICA member. I just want to add to what the conversation's been, that I do think it's more than property values. In fact, I appreciate, Phil, your comment there just a minute ago. I think of Ocean Pines also, which I look at every day. It's also about, I think, the environment and the ethos that makes Kiowa Kiowa. I'm glad our tree canopy is growing. I'm having to deal with it with cell phone signals in another role, but yeah, so be it. Right, Shannon? I think designing with nature and the other pillars, I just wanted to make sure that's included in the conversation. I know you're thinking about it, but I wanted to voice that as well.
Yeah, good point. And we have negotiated, because originally the partners have an intellectual property right to the Designing with Nature program, which is phenomenal. We have negotiated that we will get a license to continue to use that. So yes, to your point.
It's a perpetual license to use Designing with Nature in the MOU. So
Great.
that should give people a degree of confidence that we intend to stick with Designing with Nature, because we've seen that it's been effective in maintaining property values and increasing property values.
It can preserve and increase property values. I'm willing to take a lesser property value increase if it maintains what Kiowa is.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We agree. David again? Oh, and then ma'am after that.
This transition pursuant to your timeline is about 2 years to get to the final. I think what should be looked at is, number one, and I suggested this before, and I think Mark Burma thought it was a good idea, is to survey all of the non-buildable lots non-built lots on the island, the owners, to see what plans they have, if any. And also project out as best as possible where those unbuilt lots are going to be 2 years from now. There's so much construction going on. I think it'll help looking at basically the mass of the work that might need to be done, predominantly, obviously on single family homes. The commercials, I mean, the commercial stuff that's most likely being built is you get next to the gas station, and then the rest is the resort. And they're pretty open as to what they're going to be doing and when they're going to do it to the extent they can.
And to that point, I think the mayor has structured his DRB to deal with the commercial side.
Right.
So that helps.
But knowing, you know, where we're going to be, and for other reasons also for contributions to reserves, what are they going to look like coming down the road? Because they've been so great lately, but there's not that many lots left. And, you know, we don't want to overstaff it and find out we got, you know, 6 people on the ARB and nobody's building houses.
Yeah, I agree.
But you know, David, just another observation, which I know you know, but just as a sort of general observation, the activity here is not so much, you know, looking forward is not so much new development, but as properties age out, there's going to be a lot of renovation, and then we're going to get to tear down stages. And so there's an evolution of the population of structures on the island that is still evolving very much. And new development is a relatively small part of that.
I know, but it wouldn't take much to get a handle on it.
No, we can count it.
So to your point, there's gonna be a burn rate, and we have to figure out what that is, because we may not ramp up to the point where our existing permit application fees are driving the funding.
Is there anyone else?
Amanda?
Going once? Going twice? Anyone online?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. We got some.
Let me just snuck in. We have Aaron Slater. Aaron, you should be unmuted on our end.
Okay. Aaron? Aaron? She unmuted?
I've unmuted her on our end.
Okay, maybe she bumped it. Well, if no one has anything else, I think our plan going forward is to
Annie
take.
McGowan, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
I think our plan is to take all the feedback we heard from today, and we're really going 2 paths. We're gonna work with our attorneys, get additional feedback, and work on the resolution for KICA to form its ARB. And we're gonna start working with Kiwa Partners on a draft of the omnibus agreement that we can share with the community as well. So happy to hear feedback. If you have it, please send it in. Otherwise, thanks for coming out today, or at least listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.